Hi guys, I'm back to read the rest of chapter 5. So I'm going to start on page 75 in the middle if you're following along. So chapter 5 is kind of an important chapter because we find our main character, Ponyboy and Johnny, are on the run in the middle of kind of nowhere, in the country, in a church in Windricksville. And they're upset and they're kind of disguising themselves because they're on the run. And here we go on the middle of chapter 5. The next 4 or 5 days were the longest days I've ever spent in my life. We killed time by reading Gone with the Wind and playing poker. Johnny sure did like that book, although he didn't know anything about the Civil War and even less about plantations, and I had to explain a lot of it to him. It amazed me how Johnny could get more meaning out of some of the stuff in there than I could. I was supposed to be the deep one. Johnny had failed a year in school and never made good grades. He couldn't grasp anything that was shoved at him too fast, and I guess his teachers thought he was just plain dumb. But he wasn't. He was just a little slow to get things, and he liked to explore things once he did get them. He was especially stuck on the Southern gentlemen, impressed with their manners and charm. I bet they were cool old guys, he said, his eyes glowing, after I'd read the part about them riding into sure death because they were gallant. They remind me of Dally. Dally? I said, startled. Shoot, he ain't got any more manners than I do, and you saw how he treated those girls the other night. Soda's more like them Southern boys. Yeah, in the manners bit, and the charm too, I guess, Johnny said slowly. But one night I saw Dally getting picked up by the fuzz, and he kept real cool and calm the whole time. They were getting him for breaking out of the window in the school building, and it was Two-Bit who did that, and Dally knew it. But he just took the sentence without batting an eye or even denying it. That's gallant. That was the first time I realized the extent of Johnny's hero worship for Dally Winston. Of all of us, Dally was the one I liked least. He didn't have Soda's understanding or dash or Two-Bit's humor or even Derry's Superman qualities. But I realized that these three appealed to me because they were like the heroes in the novels I read. Dally was real. I liked my books and clouds and sunsets. Dally was so real, he scared me. Johnny and I never went to the front of the church. You could see the front from the road, and sometimes farm kids rode their horses by on their way to the store. So we stayed in the very back, usually sitting on the steps and looking across the valley. We could see for miles, see the ribbon of highway and the small dots that were houses and cars. We couldn't watch the sunset since the back faced east, but I loved to look at the colors of the fields and the soft shadings of the horizon. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Johnny and I slept huddled together for warmth. Dally had been right when he said it would get cold where we were going. Being careful not to wake Johnny up, I went to sit on the steps and smoke a cigarette. The dawn was coming then. All the lower valley was covered with mist, and sometimes little pieces of it broke off and floated away in small clouds. The sky was lighter in the east, and the horizon was a thin golden line. The clouds changed from gray to pink, and the mist was touched with gold. There was a silent moment when everything held its breath, and then the sun rose. It was beautiful. Golly, Johnny's voice beside me made me jump. That sure was pretty. Yeah, I sighed, wishing I had some paint to do a picture with while the sight was still fresh in my mind. The mist was what was pretty, Johnny said, all gold and silver. Ooh, I said, trying to blow a smoke ring. Too bad it couldn't stay like that all the time. Nothing gold can stay. I was remembering a poem I'd read once. What? Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief, so dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. Johnny was staring at me. Where'd you learn that? That was what I meant. Robert Frost wrote it. He meant more to it than I'm getting, though. I was trying to find the meaning the poet had in mind, but it eluded me. I always remembered it because I never quite got what it meant by it. You know, Johnny said slowly, I never noticed colors and clouds and stuff until you keep reminding me about them. It seems like they were never there before. He thought for a minute. Your family sure is funny. And what happens to be so funny about it? I asked stiffly. Johnny looked at me quickly. I didn't mean nothing. I meant, well, Soda kind of looks like your mother did, but he acts just exactly like your father. And Derry's the spitting image of your father, but he ain't wild and laughing all the time like he was. He acts like your mother, and you don't act like either one. I know, I said. Well, I said, thinking this over, you ain't got any of You ain't like any of the gang. I mean, I couldn't tell Two-Bit or Steve or Derry about the sunrise and clouds and stuff. I couldn't even remember that poem around. I couldn't even remember that poem around them. I mean, they just don't dig. Just you and Soda Pop, and maybe Cherry Valance. Johnny shrugged. Yeah, he said with a sigh, I guess we're different. Shoot, I said, blowing a perfect smoke ring. Maybe they are. By the 5th day, I was so tired of bologna I nearly got sick every time I looked at it. We'd eaten all our candy bars in the first 2 days. I was dying for a Pepsi. I'm what you might call a Pepsi addict. I drink them like a fiend, and going for 5 days without one was about to kill me. Johnny promised to get some if we ran out of supplies, and had to get some more, but that didn't help me right then. I was smoking a lot more than I usually did, I guess because it was something to do, although Johnny warned me that I would get sick smoking so much. We were careful with our cigarettes. If that old church ever caught fire, there'd be no stopping it. On the 5th day, I had read up to Sherman's siege of Atlanta in Gone with the Wind, owed Johnny $150 from poker games, smoked 2 packs of Camels, and as Johnny had predicted, got sick. I hadn't eaten anything all day, and smoking on an empty stomach doesn't make you feel real great. I curled up in the corner to sleep off the smoke. I was just about asleep when I heard, as if from a distance, a low, long whistle that went off with a sudden high note. I was too sleepy to pay any attention, although Johnny didn't have any reason to be whistling like that. He was sitting on the back steps trying to read Gone with the Wind. I had almost decided that I had dreamed the outside world and there was nothing real but bologna sandwiches and the Civil War and the old church and the mist in the valley. It seemed to me that I had always lived in the church, or maybe lived during the Civil War, and had somehow got transplanted. That shows you what a wild imagination I have. A toe nudged me in the ribs. Glory, said a rough but familiar voice. He looks different with his hair like that. I rolled over and sat up, rubbed the sleep out of my eyes, and yawning. Suddenly, I blinked. Hey, Dally. Hey, pony boy, he grinned at me, or should I say Sleeping Beauty? I never thought I'd live to see the day that I would be glad to see Dally Winston, but right then he meant one thing, contact with the outside world, and it suddenly became real and vital. How's Soda Pop? Are the fuzz after us? Is Derry all right? Do the boys know where we are? What? Hold on, kid. Dally broke in. I can't answer everything at once. You two want to get something to eat first? I skipped breakfast and I'm about starved. You're starved. Johnny was so indigent he nearly squeaked. I remembered the bologna. Is it safe to go out? I asked eagerly. Yep. Dally searched his shirt pocket for a cigarette and finding a note said, Got a cancer stick, Johnny Cake? Johnny tossed him a whole package. The Fuds won't be looking for you around here, Dally said, lighten up. They think you let out for Texas. I've got the Bucks T-Bird parked down the road a little way. Gosh almighty, boys. Ain't you been eating anything? Johnny looked startled. Yeah, whatever gave you the idea we ain't? Dally shook his head. You're both pale and you lost weight. After this, get out in the sun more. You look like you've been through the mill. I started to say look who's talking, but decided it would be safer not to. Dally needed a shave. A stubble of colorless beard covered his jaw, and he looked like he'd been the ones who had been sleeping in clothes for a week instead of us. I knew he hadn't seen a barber in months, but it was safe not to get mouthy with Dally Winston. Hey, pony boy. He fumbled with a piece of paper in his back pocket. I got a letter for you. A letter? Who from? The president, of course, stupid. It's from Soda. Soda Pop, I said, bewildered. But how did he know? He came over to Buck's a couple days ago for something and found that sweatshirt. I told him I didn't know where you went, and he didn't believe me. He gave me this letter and half his paycheck to give you. Kid, you ought to see Derry. He's taken this mighty hard. I wasn't listening. I leaned back against the side of the church and read. Pony boy, well, I guess you got into some trouble, huh? Derry and me nearly went nuts when you ran out like that. Derry's awful sorry he hit you. You know he didn't mean it. And then you and Johnny turned up missing, and what with that dead kid in the park and Dally getting hauled into the station, well, it scared us something awful. The police came by to question us, and we told them as much as we could. I can't believe little old Johnny could kill somebody. I know Dally knows where you are, but you know him. He keeps his mouth trapped shut and won't tell me nothing. Derry hasn't got the slightest notion where you are, and it's near killing him. I wish you'd come back and turn yourselves in, but I guess you can't since Johnny might get hurt. You sure are famous. You got a paragraph in the newspaper even. Take care and say hi to Johnny for us. Soda Pop Curtis. He could improve his spelling, I thought after reading it through 3 or 4 times. How come you got hauled in? I asked Dally. Shoot, kid, he grinned wolfishly. Them boys at the station know me by now. I get hauled in for everything that happens on our turf. While I was there, I kind of let it slip that y'all were heading for Texas, so that's where they're looking. He took a drag on a cigarette and cussed it good-natured for not being a cool. Johnny listened in admiration. You sure can cuss good, Dally. Sure can, Dally agreed wholeheartedly, proud of his vocabulary. But don't you kids get picking up my bad habits. He gave me a hard rub on the head. Kid, I swear, it don't look like you with your hair all cut off. You used to look tough. You and Soda had the coolest looking hair in town. I know, I said sourly. I look lousy, but don't rub it in. Do y'all want something to eat or not? Johnny and I leaped up. You better believe it. Gee, Johnny said wistfully, it sure will be good to get into a car again. Well, Dally drawled, I'll give you a ride for your money. Dally always did like to drive fast, as if he didn't care whether he got where he went or not, and we came down the red dirt road off J Mountain doing 85. I like fast driving, and Johnny was crazy about drag races, but we both got a little green around the gills when Dally took a corner on two wheels with the brakes screaming. Maybe it was because we hadn't been in a car for so long. We stopped at a Dairy Queen, and the first thing I got was a Pepsi. Johnny and I gorged on barbecue sandwiches and banana splits. Glory, Dally said, amused, watching us gulp the stuff down. You don't need to make out like every mouthful's your last. I got plenty of money. Take it easy. I don't want you getting sick of me. I thought I was hungry. Johnny merely ate faster. I didn't slow down until I got a headache. I didn't tell y'all something, Dally said, finishing his third hamburger. The Socs and I are having an all-out warfare all over the city. That kid you killed had plenty of friends, and all over town it's Soc against Grease. We can't walk alone at all. I started carrying a heater. Dally, I said, frightened. You kill people with heaters. Yeah, you kill them with switchblades too, don't you, kid? Dally said in a hard voice. Johnny gulped. Don't worry, Dally said. It ain't loaded. I ain't aiming to get picked up for murder, but it sure does help a bluff. Tim Shepard's gang and our outfit are having it out with the Socs tomorrow night at the vacant lot. We got hold of the president of one of their social clubs and had a war council. Yeah, Dally sighed, and I knew he was remembering New York. Just like the good old days. If they win, things go on as usual. If we do, they stay out of our territory, but good. Two-Bit got jumped a few days ago. Derry and me came along in time, but he wasn't having too much trouble. Two-Bit's a good fighter. Hey, I didn't tell you. We got us a spy. A spy? Johnny looked up from his banana split. Who? That good-looking broad I tried to pick up that night you killed the Soc. The redhead. Cherry, what's her name? Okay, so that's the end of chapter 5.